Well, hello and welcome back to the OneSoccer Hangout. Great to be joined by the 43-time capped Canadian international Iain Hume, Gareth Wheeler, and our boy out of the bubble, Oliver Platt. Great to see everyone. Ollie, nice for you to be outside of Charlottetown and a new backdrop today as well. Looking good.
Yeah, I put this together slightly improvised on short notice, but yeah, it's good to be back. I've been walking like I've never walked before, just taking advantage of fresh air that I can now enjoy. So yeah, it's nice.
And Hume, you're just about moved into the new place in Ontario, so things are on the up and up for you as well?
Yeah, just waiting on the final things coming over from the UK. It takes little bit longer than I was hoping, but family settled in, kids are in school, so it's well and truly underway.
And OneSoccer FC naughty boy, Gareth Wheeler, who was sin-binned last night. Have you cooled down since your escapade yesterday?
That officiating was absolutely abysmal. I thought I was sent off and not into the sin bin, and actually could have come on for the final 2 minutes, maybe to add that final push for Deportivo Union One Soccer. Unfortunately, I just took off my gear. I was done with it. So a one-goal loss in the championship game, 5-4. Adam, you were on fire last night.
That's why I brought it up.
Short. I couldn't sleep last night. Honestly, I couldn't sleep.
I just had to get Wheels riled up. It's going to be a good show. And while the game was going on last night, there was something a little more important going on in the world of soccer, and that was the Concacaf Gold Cup draw. Canada learned its fate. They drew into Group B with the U.S., Martinique, and the preliminary winner, so one of either Haiti, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Bermuda, or Barbados. Overall, gentlemen, how are we feeling about the group? And let's start here. Is it safe to say, Ollie, that this is the group of death of the four?
Yeah, relatively speaking, I think it is. Obviously, if it's Haiti that comes through the preliminaries, we know they're a tough nut to crack. Martinique, it should be a win for Canada, obviously, but you look at what they did in Nations League, and they had Honduras and Trinidad in their group and got 3 draws in those 4 games. So again, not an easy team to beat. And then you look at what could be waiting in the knockout rounds, and if Canada comes second in that group, you're probably going to be in the half of the draw that Costa Rica and Mexico are in. So it could be just about as difficult as it gets in terms of what was possible. But it still should be a group that Canada should get through, right? When you look at the resources of this country compared to Haiti and Martinique.
Wheels, any disagreements there?
I love it. I love this group. Bring on the Americans. Let's bring it back to 2019, a better time. A massive win for this country. And why not do that all over again at the Gold Cup? And I think that Ollie just said it right there. All of these nations are going to have to deal with fixture congestion in terms of World Cup qualifying campaigns, Gold Cup. For a number of these nations, under 23 players are going to be involved in Olympic qualifying as well. It's going to be a crazy year if you're a fan of international football. And I love this group. Okay, if Haiti is a team that ends up coming through, they might be the team that you end up having to go through to make it to the final 8 in World Cup qualifying. Martinique, I know this is kind of ironic, isn't it, that they're playing a country that's not sanctioned by FIFA, because that's one of the reasons why Canada wasn't involved in the top 6 of potential hex in the first place. In the United States, look, if there was one country you wanted to avoid in this draw, it's Mexico. Every time, Mexico is still the best team in this region. I still think there's a ton of pressure on Greg Berhalter, and we'll see how deep he needs to go in terms of his group that he'll select. And he's a head coach that needs plenty of time to get his team playing the way that he wants them to play. So I love this group. I love the competition, and bring it on. July 2021 cannot come soon enough.
Yeah, just to add to that, Wheels, Martinique obviously not sanctioned. Their FIFA sanctioning, if you will, would technically fall under the French umbrella. Martinique also has the best flag in this competition, aside from the Canadian one, of course. Hume, you have 2 Gold Cups under your belt, 05 and 07. And of course, you know the Americans all too well, especially in that 07 Gold Cup. What do you think about Canada's group drawing the Americans right off the hop?
I think it's a good thing. You've got to listen. The tournament only goes on for a little while. You got to know who you got to beat, and Mexico, US are always the big ones. Costa Rica, Honduras, in the past have always given a few problems, but I think coming up against the States, I think, like Greg or Gareth said there, it's you've got 2019. Canada showed how good they can be, but then also in the reverse fixture showed how poor they can be. it's a great one for them, especially leading up to with the qualifiers around, leading up into this Gold Cup. I think the US, you're going to have to play them or Mexico at some point if you want to progress and win the tournament. So getting them in the group stage isn't a bad thing.
I'm going to come right back to you for this next one. We'll do a fill in the blank. For Canada to make it out of this group, blank needs to happen. First word to you, Iain.
Apart from win 2 games.
Apart from win 2 games, of course. You had to take the easy way out, Iain. Come on.
No, that's it. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You could be playing the dog and duck, or you could be playing the US, Mexico, and Trinidad, and anybody. You're going to have to win 2 games to get out of that group. And you want to be, obviously, avoiding Mexico in the next round, but no other team really is there for Canada to be worried about, in my eyes. From what I've seen over the last 18 months, I don't think Canada has anybody to worry about.
Wheels, Iain took the layup answer, so I'll give you the next word.
You're teeing me up for a word I shouldn't be probably saying. I want to say no, but what has to happen? I don't know if one word's the answer. Like, Canada just needs to play Canada's game. I think we've seen how this group can play over the past 18 months. You've seen the rise of not only players going from a very good level to a superstar level like Davies and David, but you've also seen players emerge, whether it's in Major League Soccer, whether it's players who are playing across Europe right now who have improved their game. Look, there's a really good mix of experienced players and young players in this squad. And if everything lines up the way it should be through World Cup qualifying, which Canada could go on and play 4 games in the month of June in the build up to this tournament. So it's kind of one tournament coming on the heels of another. I think a lot of it's going to be predicated on what happens in June, what kind of team you're going to see, the fitness of these players, and what players may or may not be available based on club commitments in Major League Soccer, because there's a lot of MLS Canadian players who may be part of this group. So there's so many different variables that are going to have an impact on just what this squad actually looks like for this tournament.
All right, Ollie, fill in the blank.
Well, that's the big question for me, is just what kind of squad are we looking at for the Gold Cup? Both John Herdman and Greg Berhalter kind of said the same thing last night. Like, the clubs are obligated to release players for the FIFA window and then for the Gold Cup as well. But it's whether or not they want to do that. They're trying to preserve relationships. Do they want someone like Jonathan David or Alphonso Davies to play a full club season in Europe, then play the June window and then play the July window and then go straight back into preseason with their clubs, right? It's a lot to ask of them. And kind of the impression I got from Herdman was that he thinks he's going to have 2 different groups in June and July. And the World Cup will be the priority, particularly if it's that knockout tie against Haiti that month, right? Depending on how the schedule pans out. So, yeah, for me, the big question mark is just what kind of squad we're going to be looking at for the Gold Cup. I think they should still have enough options to get past Haiti and Martinique, but it might not be, the full strength group that could potentially go, right the way to the final of this tournament.
We're all on board that the priority has to be World Cup qualifying in June, right? Like those 4 games are huge, but considering who's in this preliminary group for Canada, if it's looking positive, that in a more comfortable way that Canada is going to go on to the Oct, doesn't that afford you the opportunity to play more of these players at the Gold Cup? Because I agree with you. I think for a lot of these players, it's going to be either or. Some players coming off a busy European footballing campaign where players like Alphonso Davies, who are going to be playing every 4 days roughly in terms of cup competition, league competition, Champions League competition. I mean, it's going to be an extremely difficult year for all players involved. So whereas generally during a Gold Cup, you'll have your squad of 23, and World Cup qualifying, when you go through a cycle, you'll maybe have 30 players involved. I'm looking at this, you probably need 50, 60 players available. You're going to be going that deep into your player pool in order to make it through both 2021 and 2022. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I mean, that sounds about right to me. You're probably going to need about 50 players.
It's possible, yeah. And it's a good thing they had that January camp where they gave a lot of new players opportunities and got a look at a few guys, because they might be needing them now.
See, my argument here, I'll argue that is Ollie said about when you're going from, you're going to have the possibly 4 games in June, and then you've got the July tournament, and worrying about people having a long season and maybe having to rest and this and that. How many people question it when the Euros has been moved to next month or next summer as well? Are these teams going to drop players because they've had a long season? Listen, in the way I see it is, they had quite a long layoff just now, so they had their summer. Everyone's complaining to the roofs about, oh, we haven't had a break. Well, you had 3 months off, realistically, or 2.5 months off before you were properly training. So you had your summer condensed, okay, before the season actually finished. It's gonna be long, but the thing that's changed over the last 10, 15 years is these guys are supreme athletes now. Yeah. And I'll vouch for this. I was not one of those, but the new era and the new generation of players, they're supreme athletes. They have the proper recovery, proper training, proper off season, proper days off. They do everything the right way. To play every 4 or 5 days shouldn't wear them out to the extent where maybe missing one game, then coming back in, changing the squad too much. I think if we do that, I think it's gonna. Some of the guys, like you're saying about, they got the January camp and they got to see some players, but are they ready to be regulars? Are they
Probably
ready to
not.
Step into play against the US?
Hume, but now it's not just a matter of the fitness of the players, it's what their club teams are saying. And a lot of these club teams, keep maintaining these relationships over the longer term is a priority for the national team. And look, just making a rough list of 53 players, 24, 25 of them come from Major League Soccer. I have about 7 coming from the Canadian Premier League. I don't think the Canadian Premier League would turn down the availability of their players to play and represent for this country. But a lot of these, these 3 Canadian MLS teams, Vancouver more than Toronto FC and the Montreal Impact are built around Canadian players. How many are you willing to let go on top of American players or players that come from other countries in CONCACAF? Like, it's going to be an extreme balancing act for both club and country here. So I get you, the players might be more fit, but the commitments are pulling them in multiple different ways. And I think you got to be careful with that. Yeah.
And that's an argument I've always wondered is, why is the CONCACAF tournament being run at the same while the league is running? And I'm sorry if I don't agree with this whole, the way the Americans used to do it, where they'd come out and they play a team for the first round of games against Martinique, Bermuda, and bloody Costa Rica or something like that. And then for the second round, they send them all home and bring out the first team. No, if you go into a tournament, you bring in your group of 23 and then that's it. None of this chopping and changing. They have a bigger pool than everybody. Them in Mexico, up until ourselves over the last, 2-3 years, they've had probably a pool 3-4 times the size of ours. They can afford to do that. Other teams can't. Yep. So for me, I think when the tournament's on for that month, I know obviously you can't shut down the league, but there needs to be exceptions of what you can change and when you can change it.
Ian, obviously in the height of your career, you weren't playing in the middle of a pandemic and a fixture congestion this intense. But having said that, what experiences can you draw that relate as much to this as possible? And further to what you semi-joked about not being the same level of fitness as these athletes are right now, how do you mentally prepare for such a tight window as well?
Well, playing in India, we were playing every 3-4 days. It's fact. Maybe once in the season we'd get a week off or 8 days off. The rest of it was 3, 4, 5 days apart. So even that, the way the game's evolved is you don't end up training as much. And when you do, it's walkthroughs and it's basic training just to tick over. You're recovering completely, like day after or 2 days after a game, you're pretty much just doing recovery. Then you do tactics, set pieces, and then you play the game again. It's keeping players mentally motivated more than physically now, because everything they do is evolving so far that you are ready to go at the drop of a hat. And I think 3, 4, 5 days, I think it shouldn't be a problem for players nowadays. For me, I can play 90 minutes every 3, 4 days without a problem. The recovery side takes a little bit longer the older I got. But I think the guys nowadays, especially the pool that they've put together, John Herdman's put together, I think these guys will be chomping at the bit. I'd be wanting to pull on the jersey every chance I got.
Yeah. So we've obviously spent a lot of time discussing the the potential for clubs to not release their players and not knowing what the player pool for Canada is going to look like. But for this next question, I want you all to imagine that John Herdman has the pick of the litter, absolutely no disruptions. He has who he wants. Having said that, Ollie, who will be the most important player for Canada in the year 2021?
For me, it's easy. It's not a very interesting answer, but it's Alphonso Davies, closely followed by Jonathan David. I think you look particularly at the Gold Cup and you look at the best Gold Cup campaigns we've had in the modern era, 2000, obviously 2007 as well. And they both happened when you had a Canadian be the best player at the tournament and really elevate their own play, but also the team along with them. You know, Craig Forrest, obviously in 2000, and then Julian de Guzman in 07. I think, you know, we have a bit of a golden generation here and a really, you know, talented team, but we still don't have the depth and the balance of the States and Mexico. And so you do need your star guys to really raise their level and to take the team along with them for me. And it's when those players play well that you can start to maybe believe that this Canadian team can take on the best in the region and potentially win a trophy.
Gareth Wheeler?
It has to be Alphonso Davies, right? Yeah. And not just what he brings, but where he plays. That's the conversation that's being had right now amongst Canadian soccer fans and supporters, whether it's online, whether it's with their friends, wherever. They're having the conversation. How do you best use Alphonso Davies, and how do you get the most of him for the team? And that's the thing. Everyone's playing fantasy football right now and not thinking about what John Herdman wants from his group and how to get the best version of this team. And so I think that that's going to be the overriding conversation, and it all revolves around Fonzie right now. And rightfully so, because I think that once they establish where Alphonso can suit this team best, then you can start putting the other pieces together and figure out systematically how this team is going to play and how they're going to be efficient with so many games in a short period of time. And both Herdman and Berhalter are very similar this way. They're methodical in their approach. Like, if they could have these players week on, week end, like, they would keep them and drill in their system. I think they're going to have to be a little bit more pragmatic for these tournaments with players coming in and out. But if you have Alphonso Davies, he's going to be the centerpiece of anything that you do.
Iain, if you're going to make it a clean sweep and select Alphonso Davies, I want you to explain to me as well how important it is for Canada as a footballing nation, reputation-wise around the world, for both he and Canada to show up well in such a big year.
Well, it's massive. Like, he's arguably right now the best left back in the world. That's where the argument starts when you're obviously John Herdman. You have to speak to Fonzie and see what he wants. As a fan, the professionals that are sitting here analyzing games and everything, where does he play? The bed, do you move? He is so dynamic in the way he plays when he's up front, but he's just won the Champions League playing left back. He's, like I said, potentially the best left back in the world at the moment. Where do you play him? For me, I've got to put him at the back, because he has that athleticism, because he is so dynamic and he's so good at doing what he does. He's with Bayern Munich, but there's no reason to say he can't repeat that with us. So for me, we have a lot of players going forward. Okay, not everybody is Alphonso Davies going forward, but definitely not everybody is Alphonso Davies going backwards. So for me, he plays there. And if he shows up the way he has over the last 18 months with Canada, previously before last season with Bayern, I think it's a massive year. And I think it's for fans, for everybody involved with Canada soccer, I think it's just huge. It should be an exciting time for people. We hosted the Women's World Cup a couple of years ago. They hosted the Under-20 World Cup in Canada in 2005, was it? 2007.
Yeah.
So they're the only times people have really, as a fan base, have really been able to get overly excited. Beat the US in 2019. All of a sudden, it rises again. We get beat by the US. Okay, it's a little bit somber, but now we've got World Cup qualifiers. We've got the Gold Cup. We're hosting the World Cup. I think if you're ever going to bring in a fan base that's going to grow and expand exponentially, it's an incredible time to begin a journey as a fan of Canadian soccer. If you're not a fan yet and you become a fan, what a time. And I think the generation of players, they're so young. These guys will be around when we're hosting the World Cup. So fans should know their name inside out in the house. Everyone knows all the women's team because of their success.
Yeah.
There's no reason from now until hosting the World Cup and beyond, the team and the players shouldn't become household names.
I completely just jumping in here really quickly. Hume, this has been my biggest issue with Canada soccer over the years. You and your teams haven't been given the regular platform to go out and play. And now with so many games coming up, this is a chance to see the men's national team on a regular basis in games that fans can actually watch and consume and get behind the group and build familiarity with the group. It was just completely inconsistent. You guys might have 5-6 games a year. Some of them would be behind closed doors. 2021 is going to be an unprecedented year for Canadian soccer and a chance for the men's national team to take a step forward and start building that respect that you deserve. I don't know how you feel about that, but it's always bothered me that the Canadian men's national team has never played enough games on home soil in front of our own fans and not enough games that are competitive in nature overall. And that's what we're getting in 2021.
Yeah, well, this is what we were talking about a couple months ago, was about the Nations League. What is it? Is it worthwhile? Is it this? It's competitive.
Yep.
And okay, you may go out and win a game 8-0. You may go and win 3-1. You may, whatever. It's competitive. You're playing for your country. And you're playing competitive games. No disrespect. I made my debut in Libya. Did I really want to go to Libya and play a game, a friendly that meant nothing? Yes, because I made my debut. But I'd rather have played against Costa Rica and Toronto, or Honduras and Toronto, or Vancouver or Montreal. For me, playing in Canada in front of my friends and family and on national television so people can see was the pinnacle of being a Canadian soccer player. I loved it because you get the national anthem blare and you get people around you singing it. I still get goosebumps every time. And I stay awake and watch the games when the guys are playing because I love watching Canadian soccer. I love watching guys that I've seen grow, that I've played with. So as a fan, I think now, like you said, 2021 is going to be incredible to be a fan or to become a fan.
Yep.
Yeah. I have a feeling that his. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, just to add to that as well, I hope whatever the squad looks like for the Gold Cup, they kind of embrace the challenge and embrace the big games that are ahead of them and don't kind of start making excuses. Because one of the big frustrations for me last year was, as bad as the Haiti game was, the Mexico game in the group stage was almost more disappointing to me because they'd been playing these minnows in Nations League qualifying and, not really been tested. And then they had this Mexico game. They had an opportunity to really test themselves and they rotated the whole team and just parked the bus. And it was like, for me, we saw the effect of that in the Haiti game when they weren't prepared for a bit of adversity and a bit of quality up against them because they hadn't used that Mexico game to maybe expose a few of their weaknesses and see where they were getting caught out. So I think regardless of what players you see at this tournament, I'd really like to see Canada, just not be afraid of maybe losing a few games and learning the lessons from them.
I want to shift the conversation back towards John Herdman, and Gareth, I'll give you the first word on this. What do you think is the biggest question for him as manager heading into this year?
Other than where to play Alphonso Davies?
Other than that small detail, yeah.
I think that there's some good young players that are out there to be recruited from an international perspective. I get on the phone and start really selling this program and the project heading into 2026. We all know about Io Akinola, the Toronto FC striker. He's a choice to make. Canada, United States. I mean, with the depth that you're going to need, Akinola would absolutely feature in a really talented attacking group for this team. You have Cavallini, David, Larin, Akindele's had a really good year with Orlando City, Liam Miller, to name a few. But Akinola would be very much part of that setup if he decides to represent Canada. There are other very good young players who have Canadian eligibility who are playing overseas right now. I want to share a couple names. Theo Corbino, who plays for Wolves. He's an under-23 striker. He's 18, big boy. He starts every game for them. He looks like he could be the real deal. Ferdi Kadaglu, midfielder with Fenerbahce. He's playing every day in the Turkish top division. Omar Marmoush, he's a striker with Wolfsburg, 21 years of age. Dominic Yankov, who's playing for Ludogorets right now in Bulgaria. He's a midfielder as well. Go out and recruit, because I'm looking at some of the other names I'm including in my list of players. You want as many options as possible. And if you're going to be preaching about building your program out from 40 to 50 to 60 players, you're going to need players who are playing on a regular basis at the highest level possible. That's what Herdman continues to preach. And that's how you're going to go do it, because not every player who's available to John right now is either playing on a regular basis or playing at the highest level they can. So I think that recruitment is going to be huge, and convincing some of these players on the fringes to come and join the Canadian men's national team program ahead of the busiest year on record.
Gareth Wheeler really did his research today. I like this. Ollie, what's your biggest question for John this year?
I think it's just for Herdman and for the whole team. It's, are you ready? You know, they've played 3 games this year, and they're about to go into a year where they're going to play probably at least 15 between the Gold Cup and the World Cup qualifiers. So, yeah, they're going to get a little bit of an opportunity to warm up maybe in that first round of World Cup qualifying, but then it's going to be straight into games that are must-win games and or against quality opposition. So we're going to see what's been built over the past 2 years and how quickly they can adapt to what's in front of them. And it could range from being, you know, a historic year for this program, like we haven't seen in a long time, that really pushes the program forwards, or it could be a massive disappointment. So there's a lot at stake, and they've got to be ready to hit the ground running. And
finally, Iain, aside from, am I going to get a phone call in January? What's your biggest question?
Don't worry about that. No, I just think is kind of echoing Ollie is, are they ready to turn this excitement around this program into an expectation? Because everyone's watching such a young team progress and grow up. And I myself am excited about the way the program is going. And John's done a great job. He's bringing in loads of names. He's bringing in loads of players, and he's turning them into men. But this is soon going to turn into an expectation of progressing, of challenging for trophies, of qualifying for tour or World Cups. So are they ready for that? And I'm hoping they are. I'm guessing they are. I know John Herdman is, and the program is. Now's the time to get the guys ready for that. And like Gareth saying about the pool has to expand, obviously. I'd rather it not change all the time, but having the people there on standby is always nice. It's something we've never had. So, for me, it's the excitement is brewing right now, but it's going to turn into an expectation soon. And I want to see, and I hope to see this program progress to that.
Yeah, and I think there's some indications that this team is ready to take that step. Like, there are genuine competition for places in the team. Mm-hmm. How often did you play for a team, Iain, where really the group kind of picked itself based upon who was available? Like, the only position, and we'll see if Atiba comes back in the mix. I'd love to see Atiba play in some form, whether it's a qualifier, whether it's a Gold Cup. Having that kind of experience, leadership in any team is invaluable for me. But the only position where you're looking a little bit thin is at center back. I think you have enough goalkeepers, enough fullbacks, enough midfielders, enough wingers, enough players that can play up top. Center back is the problem position, Adam. So if you're going to ask me, what his biggest situation to deal with is, beyond recruitment, beyond Davies, it's making sure that you have proper partnerships at center back and how that looks over so many games. I look, there's to be about 6 or 7 players he can reliably call upon at that position. I'm not sure if that's enough to make it through. And that's arguably one of the most important positions on the field if you're going to go deep and play tournament football to your best ability. I think center back is a real concern for them, and we'll see what players are called upon and if any players can come through.
I don't know if there's 6 or 7. Is that? That's in terms
of I went Henry, Cornelius, Vittoria, Jakovic, Medjugorje James. I included a couple CPL players, Zator Didic. Didic has been in the Canadian camp as well. So that's 7 right there. I mean, but there's not much else, is there?
And in the past, other coaches have used Tiba there. Yep. Depending on the job you're up against, if you want a leader back there with somebody, I think, listen, Tiba's still the best holding midfielder in Canada, and I'm sorry about anybody else. But if you've got to get Scotty Arfield in there, you've got to get, for me, Sammy Piet's got to be in the mix there. So if you do drop Tiba back into the back 4 at some point, you've got another number there. So yeah, I'd agree, and that's always been a problem for us. Not a problem. We've always had centre-backs who've played every single game because they've constantly playing at their clubs and that. But when you're looking at strength and depth, I think centre-back is not the weakest link, but the more problematic position to fill up.
Ollie, who is the most underrated player, or the player, let's phrase that a little bit better. The player that's flying under the radar the most. We saw Richie Laryea absolutely light up the Columbus Crew the other day. Does he get a shout? Which direction would you like to go for this one?
Yeah, you got it. I think it's Laryea. Maybe not under the radar right now in Toronto just because of the way he's playing for TFC. But I think, last year we were probably looking at Richie Laryea and thinking, okay, really nice pickup for TFC, good utility player. He can do a job at right back for Canada as well and could be the starter there. I think the way he's pushed on this year, he's gone beyond that, and he now looks like a real core player for this team. When you talk about Mark Anthony Kaye and Cavallini and Osorio, kind of the domestic guys who are at the right age and are going to be a part of this program in the next few years going forward, I think Richie Laryea is right in that group now, and the surefire starter at right back. So he's been a massive surprise. TFC did a great job to pick up a player who's clearly easily good enough for MLS, off the scrap heap pretty much, and I think he's going to be an important piece going forwards for the national team as well.
Wheels, I saw your eyes and ears perk up when Ollie said right back. Are you agreeing with Laryea as the most under the radar player right now?
I agree with his assessment of Laryea, but I don't think he's the most under the radar. I think it's Junior Hoilett. I mean, he's coming off a campaign where he almost helped the Cardiff team to promotion. He's an every game type player and simply someone that his name is glossed over. So if you're going to talk about underappreciated, under talked about players, it's Junior. I mean, he's playing some of his best football of his career right now. Last Gold Cup, scored the best goal for was that 2 Gold Cups ago against Jamaica, was a wonderful strike. And he's versatile. If you look at players that can out and out play on the wing and give you some formational flexibility, Hoilett provides that for you. I'm not sure why he's not talked about more here. I think you're hearing a lot more about Laryea, a lot more about Mark Anthony Kaye, Cavallini, go down the list, Eustachio even. But Hoylett's a guy, for whatever reason, people just don't put in that mix of top players. So shout out to Brampton, Hume.
100%. Hey, no, seriously. I've never understood that. And listen, Junior's been around a long time. He's what, 31 now? 30?
He's 30. Yeah.
Guy's an absolute baller. We've fought tooth and nail for years to get him into the program. We bring him into the program and he's like the superstar for the first 18 months, a year. Then, okay, Fonzie's come through, Jonathan Davis come through, Luca's done well. They've come in. But Junior's there. This is one of my, he gets sort of brushed back a bit. And the guy's still playing week in, week out in the Championship. And people say, oh, well, it's not the Premier League. I don't care if it's not the Premier League or not. The Championship is one of the hardest leagues in European football. You put a lot of these top Championship teams up against teams from top divisions around Europe, outside of Spain, Germany, Italy, and they'll compete, if not beat them. There's some very, very good teams in the Championship. But it sort of gets pushed out of the way, oh, it's not the top division. Nah, listen, you've not played in this league. You've not been out to see this league. It's ultra competitive. It's right up there. And I think Junior, like Gareth's saying, continually doing it year in, year out, and nearly brought, like you said, an average Cardiff team. I've watched them quite a few times. They got some average players in that team, but he nearly sort of drove them into the Premier League. So, yeah.
Well, he can play on the left. He can play on the right. He came on in that U.S. game and played in a different position down the right than typically when he's playing at club football. And in building up to that, he was providing goals and assists against weaker nations, but he was still doing it. He had a very good 2019. Mm-hmm. And I just look at him as a foundational piece of this Canadian men's national team.
Yeah, and I think with the formation, I'm guessing he's still going to go with his 3 up top. It's one of those. And if he's going with 3 up top, Junior walks into that team in either of the wide positions. That's for me, because sometimes I think they accommodate other players to change formation, and they got found out a little bit at the reverse fixture against the US, trying to force playing 2 up front. I think after dominating the first game, and then we go and force it and change the formation a little bit to play 2 strikers, got picked apart. So for me, I think Junior walks into that front three. Like you said, he can play anywhere. Preferably, I'd play him on the wing. But I think he's had such an incredible season last year. I think he walks into that team, and I think he is very, very underrated.
I agree on your guys' assessment of how he is as a player. I think he's a victim to kind of trying to build around Davies and David, right? Like you're trying to figure out where you put Davies and how he fits in, whether it's in midfield or left back. But then also Jonathan David is kind of similar, right? Like he's not an out-and-out number 9, I don't think, but he's also not really a winger. Like he likes to play with a strike partner when you see him at his club and kind of drop off into the number 10 kind of space. And so how you fit Hoilett in around those two guys, I think he's probably been a bit of a victim of trying to get the best out of those two.
Play him on the right wing. If you want to play Fonzie left wing, Junior walks in on the right wing because Jonathan David's not a winger.
No,
he's like you said, he likes to come off, but that's why we play with the sort of number 10. They chop and change, and that's why you play with your advanced wingers. They get in behind. So if he comes off, it turns into a false 9. But I think trying to accommodate another striker to play David as well, so like they did against the US away, bringing in Luca to play up front or play wide, but they didn't really gel properly. So they kind of both got caught out, or they both go beyond the ball. And I think it's got to be round pegs and round holes when it comes to the big games. And I think, it's good that we're having an argument about this, because this shows that the depth and the quality of players who can walk into that team. So I guess it's a good argument to have, but I think reverting back to, I think Junior's not underrated, but underappreciated a little bit.
Yeah. Coach Hume has all the answers. Ollie, next question for you, and you can take this whether you want to go in terms of a starting 11, cracks the camp, past their prime, wherever you want to take it. But in terms of the squad right now, who are you the most on the fence about?
For me, it's Daniil Henry. I think when you look at the centre-back pool, which, as we've discussed, isn't particularly deep, he's the guy who's in his prime years. He's playing a decent level in career, maybe not the level we'd hoped for him at this point in his career, but not a bad one all the same. But he just hasn't played that well for me for Canada over the past couple of years. You know, he's made errors at key times. I think the coaching staff really likes him for his leadership qualities and what he brings to the group in that way. But just in terms of his actual performances, taking kind of the intangibles aside, I think he's been a bit of a weak link and sometimes a bit of a liability. So he for me will stay in the team because, again, there's just not that many options, and he is a guy who's in his prime years and has played at a decent level, but he has to play better, or I think he's going to be on thin ice, and you're going to have someone like Derek Cornelius knocking on the door, because I think Steven Vitória, playing in the top league in Portugal week in, week out, he has to be in the team right now. And so it's about who partners him, and Henry, I think, has to play better than he has done to keep that spot.
Wheels?
I agree with that. It's just you're looking for that, what's going to be the best partnership. And I think Cornelius didn't do much wrong, to be honest with you. I know Kamal Miller can play that position as well. He's been playing more as a fullback. He's an option in case you want to play Davies forward. I don't know if it's my biggest concern, but building off what Hume said a few moments ago, is Luca Cavallini better coming off the bench rather than being in the starting 11? I don't think this move to Vancouver has been very good for him this year at all. I'm not sure if it means he takes a step back, and sometimes players that are struggling in terms of form in club football come and play for their national team, and it kind of ignites a flame, right? Ignites a fire underneath them. That could be the case, but I like the way that Cavallini came on in that game against the United States and finished the job. Rather than a player that you use from the get-go. I think that there are some extremely athletic players in this Canadian men's national team, and I don't mind playing Jonathan David up top as more of a 9, to be honest with you, and playing with more natural wingers. And what Canada did so well in that game against the United States was dominate the central midfield area by putting an extra body in there rather than an extra body up top. So I just question the role of Cavallini on this team, whether he's an out-and-out starter in a best 11 or if he's better coming off the bench.
Finally, Iain Hume, who are you most on the fence about?
As in terms of getting into the squad, I know it's probably stepping a little bit down the depth of the squad, but I'm stuck with Kyle Aaron. I love Kyle, and when he broke through, he was incredible. The guy was banging goals left, right, and center. Orlando, he was the Messiah. He was doing all this and all that, and it was just a bad move for him. And I think it wasn't the right fit going over to Turkey for me. Obviously, probably financially very good, but we've lost the poaching goal scorer. Like, this guy was, every time he touched the ball in the 18-yard box for Orlando, it was in the top corner, bottom corner. He was hitting the back of the net. How many goals has he scored since he's moved from Orlando? Maybe 10. Like, the guy was scoring 15, 20 goals every year. So for me, we've lost that. He was our number 9. He was when he came through, before Jonathan David broke through, Kyle Aaron was, okay, we finally got a recognized number 9. And Lucas come back into the fold after being away for a while, and now Jonathan David, and you've got Kyle Aaron's probably 4th or 5th down the pecking order. And I'm not saying I don't want him in the squad. I just want to see him reignite that sort of poacher and that desire to score goals and be a winner. And I just don't think we've seen or heard of that in the last probably 2 years. And I think it'll be great if he can play on now. I know he's been involved in Besiktas' first team again after going out on loan last season. I know he's been back involved, and he's scored a couple goals in cup games and whatnot. But he needs to be getting himself back to, listen, I want to be the main man. I know it's a hard one for him because he's up against Jonathan David, who's banging in goals left, right, and centre for Canada. He's up against Luca Cavallini, who's banging goals in left, right, and centre for Canada. But Kyle Aaron was doing the exact same thing 2 years ago, and he needs to remember that, because I think I'm on the fence about him, but I think if he wants to be back in contention and he wants to show people, listen, this is what I was doing, I want you guys to remember that. I think from now until January is a perfect opportunity for him.
Yeah, he needs to move. It sounds like he might go to Holland, which I think could be a pretty good option for him when you look at what Josie Altidore was able to do in that league. But yeah, I don't think it's going to work out for him at Besiktas.
Yeah. Like I said, I think going out there financially would have been a great offer for him.
All right, gentlemen, I want to end the morning on let's end the morning on a positive note. Final question for all of you around the horn. What are you most hopeful or most excited for in 2021 for Canada? There's going to be a lot of games on OneSoccer. Of course, you're home for Canadian soccer. What are you most excited for in the calendar year 2021? Gareth Wheeler, first word to you.
How do you pick one thing? Honestly.
Well, that's why we pay you the big bucks. You got to make those tough calls, buddy.
Let's go World Cup qualifying, because now we know that there's a clear path to Qatar in 2022. And I know that, 2026, home World Cup, going to a World Cup where you're not given automatic qualification, there's something special about that. And there's no reason why Canada can't go through this initial phase and make it to the final 8, and all bets are off. I think Canada is a team right now that no other country in this region really wants to go up against. I don't think you fancy a date with Canada anymore. And when was the last time we could say that? Seriously. Greg Berhalter was full of praise of this Canadian team. The talent is there. It's about this team coming together, and it all starts in World Cup qualifying. Hopefully, fingers crossed, come March, and then we can get on with it. So it really starts in March and builds through the summer, so we can't wait.
Ian, what are you most hopeful for?
Well, just echoing Gareth there, I'm looking forward to the World Cup qualifiers starting, because I think this team has got a great opportunity, and I think they've shown it. But for me, I'm really looking forward to the USA game. I'll be honest with you. I just want to see it's hopefully a bit of redemption, because the last time they played, it was a very, very poor performance after showing how good they can be. So I wanna see them go out there and put in just a proper performance again, and just prove that it wasn't a fluke.
I'm excited for that USA game, Ian, and I'm excited for the amount of games we could have against the Americans in 2021 across all three competitions. Happy-go-lucky right now. What are you most hopeful for in 2021?
It's got to be all the games on OneSoccer, right?
Yes, good answer. There we go.
We've got World Cup qualifying. We've got the Gold Cup. Hopefully, we know they're going to play the US in the Gold Cup. Hopefully, we get through to the Ocho, and we're playing everyone that matters in Concacaf, right? So this is going to be, as I said earlier, I think a near unprecedented year for the Canadian men's national team. So yeah, I can't wait.
If it's the Ocho, we need to hook up Jason
Such a
Bateman.
better shout than the Oct. Yes, bring him in. Such a better shout than the Oct. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for spending the morning with us today, and for all of you tuning in today on OneSoccer on YouTube. Before you go, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video if you liked it, and share it with a friend. Get excited for 2021. It's not that far away, and OneSoccer is your home for everything Canadian soccer. We'll talk to you real soon, but let's get excited for 2021, shall we?
Yes.